Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Good morning, respected chairperson, my fellow presenters, and members of the audience. I am Shamragi Dattagupta, a student at Presidency University in Kolkata, India, from where I am currently pursuing my master's degree in English. Today, I'm going to talk about certain attributes of teaching fundamental to Victorian governesses, which we seem to have deliberately forgotten today. But I have come to the conclusion that it can significantly help in taming a rebel child in the present age or just improve the methods of early childhood learning. This research of mine focuses on two fictional governess characters, Charlotte Bronte's famous Jane Eyre and a not so famous character called Elizabeth Laurier, which was portrayed by the brilliant and the beautiful Sophie Marceau in the film Firelight. The respective women here are hired by a single parent or guardian to educate a so-called rebel child who is more fascinated with the limitless world outside the schoolroom than the schoolroom itself. By the end of this presentation, I hope to be able to illustrate a systematic but dynamic teaching technique which can be used in the present circumstances for early childhood learning, and maybe even further on. Jane and Miss Laurier here are quite removed from those who are defined by the angel in the house phenomenon, climbing up the social ladder to further domesticity back in Victorian England. Some would say they are even luckier. No mother figure looms around to contend with the governess's teaching methods, and the father, for both the stories, are far more absorbed with their estate duties and social graces. This wouldn't seem much different from our present age, where single parenthood is a general case and children are often left by themselves unattended. Now, so if you do find the rebel child a spoiled, lively, indulged, and sometimes wayward, and these are Charlotte Bronte's phrases, not mine, does that mean the situation is impossible and you will lose your patience and give up? Well, our two lovely governesses would like to think otherwise. The question was never about controlling the child by any means, no matter how superb this video game is. And I know it's brilliant, but the reality is a challenge on how to set these children free from the tragedy of becoming a property without personal rights. This is why Miss Laurier wants little Louisa to learn reading. This is why Jane Eyre takes pride in being an educated woman and the governess who earns her own money. They take up the roles of an appointed guardian figure and even sometimes a paid friend, and mostly a mother. One of my favorite philosophers, Alan de Botton, describes a better teacher, and not as the one holding a chalk, as one who is relaxed, who accepts the fact that the person they're teaching probably won't understand them. And most importantly, there must be an exchange of teaching, the good practice of learning from one another. While I was using Jane Eyre as a backdrop to my research, it is but from Elizabeth Laurier's character that I borrow the systematic but constantly evolving methodology of developmental teaching. To her, the intention behind her teaching is a promise to free the young mind so that it cannot be locked up, even if the body falls into a habit. And that is the first step to finding a curious object, an upstairs neighbor, which will pull the child's attention and allow them to explore the unknown. The process of teaching, therefore, must begin with the intention to create curiosity. It is only then that we can make an ordinary object mystical, holding magnificent stories. After that, what comes is a to and fro action, where you are teaching the child about those very objects that are now not so ordinary after all. It would ultimately create a reflex action where the child would be able to answer their own questions at sudden moments, but given their curious nature to the point of great annoyance, should ask a million more. This is the habit that allows the child to think. Such a system makes providing a fulfilling learning experience a significantly simpler practice and even a satisfying one. Our two governesses use a method of imitative learning to pull their children in a reflexive cycle. And we end up with a child who would have never agreed to sit and study, revolving around a habit of questioning and learning simultaneously. And what makes it more interesting is that they like it. Now, I have presented before you a pattern that is often used in calculating simple functions like addition, multiplication, division, subtraction, even fractions, and the list goes on. The first case is of an image which is supported by a text that identifies that image. A second case is made by simply inversing the units of the first case. When the two cases are produced a number of times through continuous interchanges, the idea is it should ultimately generate an independent result which will not require one of the two units that are presented, either the image or the text. Let me give you an example. In the film Firelight, Louisa is made to identify quite a many of these picture cards here. And Louisa is around 6 to 7 years old. So whether she reads the image or the text on the card, we don't really know. But once while doing this same practice, she comes upon a card that has the image missing, but the text still present. And little Louisa, to her own amazement, is able to read the name on the card. She asks herself, how do I know? The question baffles the audience too. The answer is simply in the notion of creating a reflex action or a habit. Now, what needs to be remembered here is that learning should not end in that habit. The goal of my research is a leap of faith and logic to utilize this simple yet effective method of reconstructive learning in our current social sphere, where homeschooling is becoming the immediate go-to resource, if not ideal. To enhance that reality, the demand of which increases day by day, it is essential to revive Jane and Miss Laurier's revolutionary teaching techniques to create an in-home library that will consist of all such resources to allow the child to be curious, to learn and question. In the end, I would like to point out that it is by such simple yet effective methods that even homebound schooling can become a therapeutic space. We must allow the child to want to come back to this atmosphere again and again, to know and learn. But it should also push the child to think beyond that room. It should allow him to step outside, to grow, and to dream. And yes, it is a given that homeschooling would never rise up to getting the child that social exposure that any proper institutional education would. I am accepting that, but I'm also trying to question not the situation of homeschooling, but the methods advocated for homeschooling. If and when the taboos are taken away and methods of educating are improved, homeschooling can be the best space to truly learn and acquire far more expansive knowledge about everything. Today, in this real time, we are standing at a threshold from where acquiring an education can either get better or get worse. My research thus becomes an urgent plea to improve the methods of teaching, which is the backbone of a wave of change. I thank you all for taking the time and hearing me out. I'd also like to thank all of those whose efforts helped me to create this project. This is for all the teachers who made an impact in my life, however big or small. I thank you.